Think about it. Open plan offices, where large communal desks are used in place of private rooms or cubicles, are becoming increasingly popular. From the perspective of Zajunk's social facilitation theory, do you think open plan offices are likely to facilitate or hinder performance and productivity? Why or why not? How might it depend on the type of work being conducted? Yeah, of course. So if people are competent at the task, thus it is easy for them, or if it's just a mundane, easy task, people will do better when they're in the mere presence of others. But if they're trying to struggle on something complicated or that's new or novel to them, they will do worse. They will not be facilitated socially, and they will, in fact, struggle more and get the answer wrong more if other people are clearly present around them. As well, say if their boss is highly evaluative, then they'll have evaluation apprehension, which will increase their arousal even further due to the presence of others and make them do even worse when they're struggling on a novel task. Can you think of any examples in your own life where groupthink has taken place? What factors contributed to groupthink in these situations? What kinds of safeguards could you put in place in similar future situations to promote better decision-making? I generally just avoid groups because I don't like them, and I don't like groupthink. Safeguards you can generally put in place to avoid groupthink are designating a devil's advocate and having a leader who is very egalitarian and wants other people's opinion and maybe is quiet as opposed to dominating. Suppose your company is trying to decide whether to make a risky new hire. Individually, most of the members of the hiring team lead toward hiring the candidate, as it could substantially increase revenues if it works out. When the hiring team gets together to discuss the potential hire, how might you predict that the attitudes of the individuals in the group will shift? What decision is likely to be made? So according to the group polarization effect, people will reinforce their own opinion more when they hear other people's extra supporting evidence for their opinion. Even if there's dissenting evidence too that they hear, they'll just pick out the more supporting evidence, and their initial stance will tend to become more extreme. So if most of the members are leaning toward hiring the candidate, so it's going to become even more like that. Everyone's going to want to hire the candidate after the group meeting. In The Prince, Machiavelli argued that people gain power through deception, manipulation, coercion, and the use of fear tactics. How does this perspective compare with research findings about who rises to power? So it sounds like people who have expertise and are good at facilitating other people's abilities by being social, those are the people who end up being leaders often. Do you think it's accurate to say that power corrupts? Why or why not? What factors influence the extent to which power leads to pro-social versus antisocial behavior? I like the textbook when it says power reveals. So power lets you chase your desires in a disinhibited way, much like, say, alcohol. So you do things that align with your desires. So if your desires are, corrupt, you'll see that. But if your desires are benign, that will also just be emphasized. What does research on de-individuation show about why crime rates are so high on Halloween? Okay, because you're in a group and because you're anonymous. You're more likely to get into that nice de-individuated mob mentality and wreak some chaos. Break free from the constraints of normal society and self-awareness. How could you use your knowledge of self-awareness theory to reduce cheating behavior on a test that relies on the honor system? Yeah, so you need to get students video record themselves or do the test in front of a mirror, have a wall that's a full-length mirror. Page 425, for critical thinking. Elaborate on the findings of the group polarization study using what you have learned about confirmation bias, conformity, and social identity theory. So confirmation bias means that you're more likely to look for information that already confirms instead of disconfirms what you believe. So in terms of group polarization, you basically find new arguments that you agree with when you hear a group discussion, so you're pushed even further toward evidence for your view and pushed even further into your viewpoint. In terms of conformity, so conformity is when people behave as if they agree, whether their personal beliefs have changed or not. So in a group, there's like pressure to get along with other people and seem like you're part of the norm. So then you might be less likely to speak out. So social identity theory is the idea that people associate with their group, such as basking in reflected glory, and they're more distant from out-groups. Yeah, so the tendency to want to be part of the group and then attack enemies. Yeah, that's the basic thing of it. What are some implications of group polarization in contexts such as courtroom juries, hiring committees, and university classrooms and departments? Well, it's bad in all of these places because group polarization means that people will become more extreme than is reasonable, and there will be less ability to navigate between two opposing viewpoints because they're so on one end of the scale or on the other end of the scale, which is not rational. And again, just like less middle ground to develop a common point of reference based on accurate information and research. So it's a mess. It's a huge problem. It's very dangerous. It means that policymakers, if a whole group is on one end of an extreme, will become even more extreme, or that a lot of times policymakers just can't make decisions because they can't agree on anything, and that dissenting voices are like less likely to be heard in general because people are less likely to speak up, when they have pressure to conform, etc. Especially in the face of people's already extreme views, then the moderate approach doesn't maybe hold a lot of sway for people. And maybe there's a fear that the moderate view wouldn't hold a lot of sway for people.